the fall, how it ends. It's the fall, how it ends. Or it's the fall, how we rise again. Ooh.
Greetings to all the PhysioTV viewers. It gives me immense pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Mr. Dr. Rugved Bapat. He's an alumnus student of our institute and we are very proud of his achievements so far. He has done his bachelor's from our institute and has got an overall 81.6 percentage from MUHS, including an overall second rank in MUHS in the summer of 2019 as well as 21, with subject toppers in neurophysiotherapy as well as kinesiotherapy. As an intern at our institute, Rugved has had the diverse experience in orthopedic setups as well as serving the community setups through various outreach programs. He's currently working as a consultant with Fit to Sport and excels in managing musculoskeletal as well as sports-related injuries, focusing on rehab as well as return to sport. Rugved's expertise extends to workshop and paper presentations, showcasing his continuous commitment towards getting better. Beyond his professional pursuits, he's also an accomplished classical music singer, a photographer, and an avid reader. So without wasting much time, I pass on the session to Dr. Rugved. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me and letting me speak about a topic which I am fond of, really. So a big thanks to the PhysioTV team and Sona ma'am. All right. So the whole idea for me to select this topic and talk about sports science in general was to introduce what sports science is, especially to the budding physios who are kind of in their final year or they are in their internship. So they get to know a new field which is very immersive and vast. And the second aspect of that was to explain the Indian context and how sports science functions in the Indian scenario. So as Sona ma'am mentioned, I've been working with Fit to Sport for last 2 years, and I've had the opportunity to get exposed to the field of sports science. I've been the central or core part of the team here, which has allowed me to kind of develop and help athletes to perform a little better with the background of sports science. So I think we should start with this brief introduction and let's take a deep dive into the field of sports science. So the first thing that I want to kind of expand upon is what exactly is sports science. To put it very simply, it's an umbrella term which starts from understanding or knowing a sport to the point where we kind of try and change the sport. Okay, So as you can see, Bishop et al. Have kind of put it in a nicer way, and they have defined sports science as a multidisciplinary field concerned with understanding and enhancing sport performance. Uh, Basically, this involves a big team which deals with exercise physiology, biomechanics, motor control, motor development, psychology, nutrition, and so on and so forth. So, the whole point of understanding sports science is the background for understanding sport itself. Basically speaking, sports or a sport usually starts as simply as through the rule books of defined sport, and it goes up to the performance enhancement. And this entire spectrum is covered by sports science. All right. So the one of the biggest things that sports science involves is something called a SWOT analysis, that is SWOT analysis. To put it simply, it's the analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats provided by a single subject. So every small problem that arises in the field can be dealt with SWOT analysis. So let me present to you this SWOT analysis of the current Indian sporting scenario. So as we all know, sport in general has been a booming industry, especially in India in last decade. A lot of new sports are getting good recognition. A lot of new sports are being recognized not only at a national level but also at a household level. So the strength of the current Indian sporting scenario is obviously first is the emerging talent pool. Because of the increasing popularity of a lot of sports, a lot of younger kids are now into playing newer sports, which is helping us to generate a huge talent pool. The next thing is cricket dominance. We are a country who is super proud about our cricket, our cricketing icons, and everything that happens around cricket. So definitely both at the national level as well as at the domestic level, cricket has been the central point of the Indian sporting scenario. Development of private leagues such as Indian Premier League or Women's Premier League has also given us an immense edge over the world in developing good amount of talent in the sport of cricket. The third big factor, which is now coming into the picture, is investment in facilities. As you guys must know, we have sent a bid for 2036 Olympics, and that kind of lays a roadmap map for us to develop and invest a lot in facilities to create a good sporting culture and good sporting environment. Since last couple of years, not only the government, but even the private companies have now started investing in a lot of Olympic and non-Olympic sports. The few examples of this are introduction of Pro Kabaddi League, introduction of Pro Kho League, introduction of Pro Volleyball League, Indian Super League, Ultimate Table Tennis, Pro Badminton League, so on and so forth. So the introduction of private sector into sports has also provided an amazing field for the budding athletes to grow into. And obviously, the government has also been taking some phenomenal steps, such as running a program called Khelo India program, where it starts from the level of universities. They have various Khelo India tournaments, which not only take care of Olympic level sports, but also take care of the indigenous sports such as Mallakhab or roll ball, which are not yet accredited probably at the level of Olympics. These are probably few of the strengths of the current Indian scenarios. All right. Let's move on to the weaknesses of the current Indian sporting scenario. The biggest kind of weakness that we have faced so far is the infrastructure development. Although there has been increase in the investment recently in development of infrastructure, we still lack state-of-the-art infrastructures. We still lack good quality gym setups, good quality training facilities. The next thing is the limited sporting culture. Although the sporting background has been improving in our country, there are still few sports which are not yet famous, and that kind of gives us a setback in which, since they do not generate much revenue, they are not put into limelight. So the required facilities for those sports are kind of lacking. The third and probably one of the more concerning factor is insufficient qualified medical and sports science support, which I feel is the biggest need of the hour to develop and make develop great athletes. As Indians and as an Indian, I know that our athletes are good enough, but to reach the level where China is, or where USA is, or where Australia is in terms of Olympics, we need to make sure that we kind of lay down a good pathway for athletes to become great. That brings me to the next aspect, which is lack of inter-team communication. Even though there are a couple of amazing sports scientists, sports medicine experts, sports physios, the lack of communication between, per se, the coaches and the support staff has also had an impact over how an athlete can function during, especially a critical major sporting event. And then we have few topics or few aspects which are governance issues and administrative and bureaucratic challenges, which are kind of getting better as we are focusing a little bit more on improving the sporting situation in our country. And the biggest weakness, probably, which lies in our context, is probably the lack of centralized data. This issue is so deep rooted that we kind of do not have any particular system for monitoring athletes, which kind of might help us in developing a great flow to make sure that we are avoiding injuries, to make sure that we are bouncing back from the injuries stronger than before. And for that, having a centralized body which documents all the data starting from grassroots till the international level athletes becomes the key part. And unfortunately, we kind of lack it right now, and that has become one of the biggest weaknesses for us. Moving on to opportunities, all the weaknesses that we discussed can be quickly converted into opportunities. So globalization of leagues, which has happened kind of now, integration of technology, so introducing athlete monitoring systems, introducing technologies which can help us to monitor athletes, assess athletes, development of state-of-the-art sporting hubs, creation of performance center, development of strong referral systems, and obviously standardization of treatment facilities are the positive opportunities for us. The threats obviously are human bias, favoritism, improper use of funds, inadequate grassroots development, lack of long-term planning, and obviously political interference. So now established the sport analysis for the Indian sporting scenario. So what I wanted to kind of introduce is from this, how can we kind of go to a point of understanding what sports science is? All right. So let's understand what does the spectrum of sports science actually like consist of. Okay. So as you can see, sports science majorly consists of six main domains, which includes exercise physiology or sports physiology, strength and conditioning, sports nutrition, sports psychology, recovery, and obviously biomechanical and video analysis. Each of these six domains are obviously specialities in themselves. Okay, so a sports scientist primarily works on the exercise physiology part and the strength and conditioning part of an athlete, also taking care into the recovery aspect. Although as a sports scientist or a person who is learning sports science, you're also introduced to something called sports nutrition, sports psychology. All right, there are specific masters or specific postgraduate programs which kind of help you to kind of get a deeper understanding of sports nutrition and sports psychology. That's one part. Now let's moving on to the sports medicine aspect of it, which usually takes care of the medical management of any injuries, the surgical management of injuries, biomechanical corrections, sports physiotherapy, obviously, data and research, and obviously the diagnostic aspect of injuries. So we are probably well versed, or we kind of know more about the sports medicine background or the sports medicine part of this model, but we are not so aware about the sports science background. So that's why this model kind of helps us to understand what all domains are included in sports science. Okay. So moving on to understand what exactly does a sports scientist do. Okay. So the baseline for a sports scientist or the sports science development, especially in Indian context, one of the key factors for developing and creating a good chain which helps an athlete to grow from good to better and from better to probably the best. Okay. So here we go back again to development of a centralized data which takes care of uh, knowing what an athlete is capable of, what a budding athlete is capable of doing. So development of a centralized data or athlete monitoring system becomes the central concept for talent identification. So talent identification also takes into care of athlete assessment, obviously. So after like finding a talent pool, after doing the athlete assessment, then comes the part of profiling. So profiling probably is one of the key aspects to make sure that an individual who is participating in a sport has potential to become great in that sport. Okay. So here we also talk about a term called bio banding. So bio banding also gives us an idea about which individual can kind of excel in what kind of sport. So profiling gives us something called zones of performance. So basically, zones of performance can be divided into three parts. We have a green zone, we have a orange or yellow zone, and we have a red zone. So green zone is the zone in which an athlete is performing absolutely well in the sporting scenario as well as the physical training as well. The yellow zone is where the athlete either lacks the adequate performance in the sporting situation or the physical training. And the red zone is where athlete is definitely underperforming in both the aforementioned domains. So profiling of an athlete can help us to, or helps a sports scientist to define what athlete has the potential to become kind of better at a given sport, or if the athlete can perform a little better if he or she kind of switches the sport to something else. All right. So after this, once we have kind of understood what the talent pool is like, we have profiled our athletes. We come to something called periodization. So periodization is a broad term which takes into care of how an athlete is going to train during his on season, during his off season, and during between rather two competitions. So periodization probably is the scheduling of an athlete's calendar. So in a very ideal case situation for an Olympic level athlete, the periodization plan is usually done yearly for 4 years, which takes into consideration obviously the main event, which is going to be Olympics, and the subsequent major events such as national level tournaments, Asian level tournaments, and world championships. So periodization kind of is the basis for injury prevention, injury management, and optimizing high performance. After periodization, we will kind of move on to understanding development of high performance requirements. So basically, this part of the sports science culture develops or takes care of developing a good facility. So a sports scientist is not only involved in kind of helping the athlete improve its performance, but also in creating a good sporting environment. So, for example, we have an amazing high performance center in Balewadi, as we all know. But development of that center had a lot of thought process put into it, and a lot of data was taken from sports science, where the planning was done in terms such that the equipments which are made available, the requirements which are needed are fulfilled to the requirements of the athlete. So as simple as that, the next part becomes the organization structure. So creating a hierarchy and existing infrastructure and formation of regional and distinct performance centers. So as I mentioned, the sports scientist is also involved in development of good high performance centers. And obviously the biggest aspect of sports science is that of monitoring the progress and evaluation and changes which are done in the progress in order to make sure that we are avoiding any sorts of injuries. Moving on. So these are the five most important aspects that sports science usually covers, which we talked about talent identification, we talked about profiling. We're going to talk about something called long-term athletic development. So long-term athletic development is the ideal model developed to make sure that a child or that a young individual who has entered the field of sport continues to be in the field of sports. If you can see the top right image, the first phase of a long-term athletic development starts with something called physical literacy phase. So physical literacy phase starts as early as by the age of year 6, and where we kind of give the individual an active start where the kids are put into physical activity, are made aware of how physical activity is. Followed by that, we start going into fundamentals, where the basic movement patterns, basic motor learning strategies for peculiar sports are introduced. The third phase of the long-term athletic development plan is the learn to train phase, where the athlete or the budding athlete kind of learns to train in a particular sport. So the tactical and the technical aspects of the sport are introduced a little more rigorously. Simultaneously, that budding athlete is also introduced to physical training. So the physical and the psychological aspects of their sport are also taken care of from the phase of learn to train. From there on, we kind of go to the excellence phase where the athlete kind of trains to train in order to become better and better in the technique that the athlete has achieved. Then obviously we go to train to compete and train to win. By the end of this, we come to a point of active for life and fit for life, which is the ideal goal of long-term athletic development, which starts with probably at the age of 4 or 6 years and goes on till the individual kind of persists. So this is the like very coarse introduction to long-term athletic development. And this model was developed in Canada and has now been followed all over the world as a central concept for development of good sporting culture and development of great athletes. We obviously spoke about periodization, and if you can see the bottom left image, it kind of gives a basic idea about how an annual plan kind of looks. So uh, you can see the three top headings, which include the preparatory phase, the competitive phase, and the transition phase. So preparatory phase is where an athlete is kind of physically prepared for the type of training that he's going to go through during the competitive phase. So usually preparatory phase involves the first assessment and first testing, which is kind of redone at the end of the preparatory test. Similarly, pre-competitive assessment is done and it is repeated after the competitions are done. All right. Now, each of these kind of general preparatory phase, specific preparatory phase, pre-competitive, competitive, and transition phase are kind of further divided into macro cycles. So macro cycles are usually in months and further divided into micro cycles, which are usually in terms of weeks. So that's the basic understanding of periodization. Now, coming to probably the most important aspect of sports science, which is the uh, research and continuation of education. So CPDs and research are going to be the central core concept to develop and create awareness about the field of sports science. Right now, fortunately, especially in India, the undergraduate level programs for sports science are also kind of booming. although they kind of lack the amount of medical background that they require. So creation of good amount of awareness, even in the physio community, to kind of aid the sports science in general, is going to be the primary concept or the primary step in the process of understanding what sports science is. And that kind of brings me to something that I wanted to talk about in the later half of this presentation, which is the Expo and the conclave, which is going to happen on 23rd, 24th, and 25th of December here in Pune. So this is the first of a kind of an experience in the field of sports in general. So here in this expo or an expo conclave, we are not just going to deal with the medical part of sports or the support part of sports, which kind of includes sports science and sports medicine. We're also going to deal with things like sports law, the administrative aspect of sports. So the basic understanding of this entire event is to just expand, explore, and experience the entire sporting culture in general. So it's going to be a huge event which is going to take place on 23rd, 24th, and 25th of December. Uh, the entire event is going to have 7 workshops. The few of the workshops which are going to take place are first being the running gait analysis is going to be held by Gait On. So there's going to be a live demonstration of running gait and a live analysis which is done by the in charge of Gait On. We're also kind of hosting basic life support and advanced life support workshops, which is going to be a hands-on workshop on 23rd of December and 25th of December. There is a KT or kinesiotaping workshop held by Dr. Sujata Kire. She is a certified kinesiotherapy taping practitioner, and the certificates which are going to be kind of delivered are from KTI. Uh, Probably the most important aspect in terms of the workshops which are going to be held are the below mentioned, which is the menstruation and sport, where we are going to talk to the female athletes and talk to the athletes in general and help them understand how their body and how their physiology is, especially during menstruation, and what strategies do they kind of need to take or adapt to in order to optimize their performance. Similarly, talk is going to be held for the coaches so that they are also able to optimize their individual athletes' performance. And now the two important like workshops which are going to be taken by international faculty are on agility and warm up and a coaches mastery workshop. So these both of these workshops, although seem like they're for the athletes and coaches or the strength and conditioning coaches, I also think that the physios are going to learn a lot from this because the coaches who are going to drop down from the UK are obviously the ones who have worked with Olympic level athletes and have kind of managed Olympic level teams. So this is the entire structure of the conference which is going to be held. So there are going to be panel discussions, there are going to be talks, and there are going to be obviously workshops which are going to be held. So I guess you can have a look, and if you want to know a little more about this, you can obviously go and visit the expo.com, which is the official site for the conference, and get to know a lot more about this. Thank you.
So that was a very informative talk. I'm sure our audience have been greatly informed about the entire gamut of things which come under the sports science, and what's the difference between sports medicine and sports science,
Yes,
and how each person has a role to play, and also how integrated physiotherapists also can be in not only the sports science part of it, but of course, surely in the sports medicine part of it.
absolutely.
So, all in all, it's been a very informative talk, and I'm sure we are also very excited that I think Rugved has just kind of told us about this sports conclave which is coming, which is organized by Fit to Sport and going to be held in 23rd to 25th of December in Moshi. But apart from that, I think we would really like to thank Dr. Rugved for taking out this time to kind of take this very informative and timely talk. I think with the sports boom which is happening, in India in general. I think it's high time physiotherapists sit up and take notice about, getting better, getting scientific, learning what is the most evidence-based techniques out there to kind of better their outcomes with athletes whom they might be treating. So I guess this would go a long way. And I guess sports is going to be in focus in of many more things to come. And
Absolutely.
yes, so we thank Rugved and we kind of wind up the session. But before going, apart from this conclave which is happening, I would also like the audience to know that another exciting segment on sports is coming soon with our very own Sancheti Institute for Orthopaedics and Rehabilitation College of Physiotherapy, which organizes the Scientifica conference every year. This time the theme is going to be on sports medicine and rehab sciences. So we also are kind of going to focus, and we have in line a lot of national and international speakers who are going to focus on the rehab part of it. So we are going to
Absolutely.
kind of concentrate on the rehabilitation, the surgical aspects, as well as post-operative concepts and what's the most evidence-based. So I guess it's going to be, kind of an information boom for
Yeah,
anyone interested in sports, because we have a lot
absolutely.
of interesting conferences lined up.
Yes.
Yes, so expecting the audience to take note of that. And on that note, I would like to kind of wind up the session and thank the Fit to Sport. And from the entire team of physiotherapy, this is a signing off. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.